G'day everyone. Let's have a chat about the corporation. So, no, I'm not going to be able to cover everything about the corp in one video, but I thought I'd give a bit of a primer. So, a cover of not only the sort of their history and some of the subcultures. And all this will be from. This is a Fragged second edition book that you're looking at here. And again, the disclaimer, graphic design's not done. It'll look a lot nicer afterwards. But anyway, so just doing a bit of a primer on them and how to include them in your games and recommendations. And I think in a later video, we could do a much bigger deep dive. But let's jump into it. Okay, so this is this just sort of the intro page for the corporation. We've got some new artwork here, sort of showing a bit more of a cyberpunky sort of edge. And this is Tatiana Goldsmith Threo. This is example character here, and she is what you'd call a neon hunter. We'll jump into them in a little bit, but cool. Let's have a look at let's have a look at their history. So, cool. Okay, so I'll just read some of this out. Capitalism is the only system in history where wealth was not acquired by looting, but by production, not by force, but by trade. The only system that stood for a person's right to their own mind, to their work, to their life, to their happiness, to themselves. Ancient human philosophy. Rejected by their Archon creators as a failure, the Vagati were forced to live on a single island on the Ursai-controlled desert world of Varsphere in the VAR 2205 system, commonly known as VAR. They were not allowed to travel, bound by strict birth control, and were unable to contribute to wider society or to build their own. They simply existed, a nothing species that were overlooked by all for over a millennium. During the Great Exion War, the Nephilim rained down death and destruction upon the Ursai worlds, including Varsphere. As Var was a minor system of insignificant value, few Nephilim forces were assigned to its destruction, choosing instead to rely upon orbital bombardments and biological warfare. Powerful genetically engineered viruses were deployed to target the Ursai, but not the Vagati, who were once again overlooked. By the end of the war, Varsphere was a toxic wasteland with all of its cities obliterated, all Ursai dead, peppered with roaming feral Nephilim, and its ecosystem in a state of collapse. But many Vagati had survived. Conditioned to be dependent on their Ursai keepers and uneducated beyond a basic level, the collapse of the Vagati was inevitable. 1 million died from starvation and violence in those first few years. But a new society did arise. Nomadic tribes spread across their continent, fighting other Vagatians and Nephilim beasts to seize control of precious resources. Those tribes that survived were the ones that picked their fights well, optimized their supplies, and who were able to make use of scavenged technology. For the Vagati, those years of darkness were a chance to reimagine themselves and to discard the inferior status given to them by the Archons. This reimagining began in earnest when a Vagati warlord named Vix the Smiling Slayer gained control of a remote Ursai outpost that sat alongside a great acidic lake in the center of the continent. Vix quickly learned that this outpost was a research center where the Ursai and their Archon masters from the Unending faction had been studying an ancient human city that was buried deep below the sand. Much of the valuable human era artifacts had long been removed, but what captured Vix's attention were the translated historical records. This city rose during the golden age of humanity, only a few hundred years after the formation of the ley lines, and was only abandoned by the humans for a richer planet. The humans talked optimistically of their lives and the prosperity that they had enjoyed due to a social structure known as capitalism. Vix embraced this ideology as a means to forge a new path for his people, one where a person would be judged as an individual and not according to the nature of their birth. Armed with a powerful unifying message and access to new human-age technologies, such as synth-steel, robotics, and more, it did not take long for many warlords to unite under Vix's banner. Within just 4 decades of this transformation and the discovery of multiple buried human cities, the Vagadi had taken to the stars, first travelling to the nearby Nair system, where they learned of an incredibly valuable gas giant, Mekor, which they would later rename to Alabaster, in the former Kaltoran capital system of Haven. The 10 greatest warlords of Varsphere understood the prize that they had found, an endless supply of fusion fuel and raw materials needed to create synth steel. They consolidated their tribes into the first private company, the Corporation, founded on the principles of capitalism and codified by the first Board of Management. It is at this time that the Vagadians discarded their racial identity and became the Corporation, a purely capitalistic society. What followed was a great exodus from Var to Haven, where they colonized Alabaster en masse with great space stations. This time of space colonization was extremely difficult and took the lives of hundreds of thousands of corporates, including Vix. The Corporation would have failed if not for the Eden Brood Nephilim in a never-to-be-repeated gift of generosity. The newly awoken Devway Ich, Arch-Genocrat, housed the Corporation in its mighty warships and provided food, supplies, and workers, which would eventually be replaced by organic flesh robots. Over the years that followed, the Corporation gained the attention of the yet-to-emerge Kaltorans, the nearby Legion, and the hidden Palantor, and the dormant Mechanids. They also built the Haven Var jump gate with the help of the Palantor. The Corporation had inadvertently awoken Haven and ushered in a new age. The Corporation are the greatest unifying social force within the Haven system, a fact that they don't mind mentioning to the other species. This is not for any idealistic reasons, but due to the Corporation's very nature and its constant thirst for economic growth. In their eagerness to cross cultural boundaries, corporate culture has almost no speciesism, except in regard to the Ursai remnant. They have a talent for social cohesion and a passion for order, risk mitigation, and economic growth. As a result, they have established many cross-species systems, most notably the broad use of credit chips and the widespread use of their language. Over the years, the hierarchies of both the Eden Brood Nephilim and the Corporation have solidified their working relationship in the form of the Trade Pact. In exchange for flesh robots and R&D, the Corporation provides the Nephilim with near unlimited fuel, access to economic markets, and many of their spheres of cultural and political influence. But to the deep frustration of the Corporation, relationships did not form so well with the Kaltorans. As they emerged from their subterranean aquatic pit cities on Kadash, the first Kaltorans clashed bitterly with the Corporation and their Nephilim allies, pirating their trade routes, disregarding legal agreements as they saw fit, and preferring to use barter-based systems over corporate credits. But things did calm down as trade for Kaltoran food and raw minerals grew, and the Corporation and the corporate negotiators learned how Kaltorans valued trust and respect over pragmatism and rules. The Corporation's introduction of Legion mercenary guard forces should also not be discounted, as the Kaltorans had a kinship and respect for their old straight-talking wartime allies. Both desiring order and structure and having complementary skill sets, the corporation and the legion have a natural synergy despite their glaring cultural differences. Most corporates abhor personal physical risk, while the legion relish in it. Most legion hate the monotony of economics and production, while the corporates thrive on it. Officially sanctioned legion auxilia and unsanctioned exilia mercenaries are a familiar sight in almost all CORP spaces. With each passing year, the legion grow increasingly intertwined with the corporation. With relative peace between these four species, it was far easier to absorb newcomers into Haven, especially the technologically advanced transhuman Palantor, whom the corporation are overly eager to trade with. But the arrival of the Ursai, now named Remnant, has caused the corporation many social pains as their claims of a meritocratic culture devoid of speciesism are put to the test. Not only are the Remnant a living reminder of their ancient history, but the Remnant are also the recipients of seemingly unmerited divine grace and are exerting an increasingly large amount of cultural and political influence over Haven. Oh, okay, so that was a gigantic history dump. So a couple of key points to get out of this, okay? So the corporation are the most influential culture within Fragged. All that means is, I mean, a lot of that comes from the fact that they were the first ones back into space. They have a fully functional economic and political system. So just having a system automatically gives them a great deal of power. Like, for example, comparing them with the Kaltorans, even though population-wise, there's many more Kaltorans, and same with the Nephilim, the Inbrew, there's many more of them. They don't have unifying economic systems, either of them. The Nephilim are largely adopting the Corp one, and Kaltorans are sticking with their barter system, and they're always kind of a little bit trying to be anti-Corp, but we'll see how long that lasts for them. And in terms of government, the Kaltorans don't have a unified government, and the Inbrood, they do, but like it's all under a dictatorship with the Devway Itch, but they don't have it, like their people aren't necessarily all on board with that. Whereas the Corp people, they are on board. The Corp people, they believe in their economic systems and they believe in their governmental systems by and large. Yeah. Okay. So that just sort of makes them the big boys within the setting culturally. The other thing about them is by reading through their history, you can see that they were rejected by the Archons as inferior, and then they discover this philosophy, this ancient human philosophy that was adopted not just because it was not Archon, but also it's a system that offers the promise of success based on individual merit and not your genetics, I guess, which is what they want. And so they've clung to that. So you've got the corporation, they kind of simultaneously the man and the underdog, depending on who you're talking to within the corp and what angle you're talking from. So that, and I think that's a good way of inserting them into your game, is that they're so, like, it's so cliche easy to have like corporate bad guys. Okay, so mega corporations and all that sort of stuff. It's so, it's kind of like, it's simple for people to understand. And that's good for GMs or PCs who are just looking for something that's narratively easier to slip into. Because these guys are kind of caricatures of humans. They're not human, but they're kind of a caricature of it. So they're kind of easy to insert that. But they're not a monoculture. There's lots of different subcultures and some different versions of them. They've got good and bad side. Like good side is they're not speciesists. And they are aspiring to a meritocratic society. But of course, you've got obvious downsides, whereas you've got these few really powerful people running a lot of stuff, a lot of inequality. If you're not healthy, wealthy, and smart, you're struggling to fit into the culture. It's not as forgiving. Yeah. Okay, so let's have another quick look at some of the subcultures, and yeah, we'll just do like a quick look talk about each of the sections here. This also gives you a bit of a deeper dive into the sort of content that's going to be included in the Fragged second edition lore book, because I'm really going hard on subcultures, and this is especially true with the corporation because they're so culturally vibrant. Okay, so this is the suits. This they are 65% of the corp population. They're easily the hegemonic culture. Okay, so they are called the suits because they always have a suit. No matter how poor they are, you always have a suit for social occasions. It's a way of existing within their sort of social spheres. It's like a key part of that. So I'll read the little intro flavor text, and that might give you a little hint about that. So, a suit's suit is a symbol of their social circles and status, a declaration to all who are in the know that they have made it, that they have invested in making it for this season's fashion or last season, that they have never made it but are respectable, or that you are not in their circle because you do not get it. They're a complex, ever-shifting tapestry of collars, lapels, buttons, vests, cuts, folds, materials, and hues. A simple blend of synth weave that keeps one comfortable, or adorned with shield nodes that can deflect a railgun. Every suit is a reflection of the wearer and the craftsman. Leroy Octanto, elite corporate tailor. Cool. Okay, so this section then goes about, talks about core business, credits, how they work. They're tied to fuel, the corp language, which stems from Ursai/Remnant, but has it's very adoptive of other languages. And then we also jump into here the board of management. So this is a quick cross section of the board of management. So in Frag 2, I'm really wanting to zone in on specific companies. So yes, there's lots of different corporate subsidiaries and mega corporations, but I kind of want to focus on this set here. And yeah, okay, so you got the big players. You got Maxwell Brightstar from Pinnacle Fuel. So these guys are the big fuel production company. They're also the creators of Physical Corp Credits. It's kind of this young upstart. Then you got Keaton Arc from Arc Founding. So these guys are a big construction company. They built a bunch of the corporation's big space stations around Alabasta. And Keaton Arc, he used to be a warlord back on Varsphere. He's an old guy and he's jaded because he feels unappreciated. And he's particularly got it out for Maxwell because Maxwell killed his friend, which was the previous CEO of Pinnacle Fuel. And the way that Maxwell did that was he killed her secretly, but didn't tell anyone for a number of months, and then revealed it. But during that time, he turned Pinnacle Fuel, made them much more profitable. And in corp society, there are no moral crimes. Every crime is fined. And because, so it depends, if you kill someone really poor, it's going to be a tiny fine. You kill someone really rich or as a CEO of a company, cause lots of economic damage, it's going to be a big fine. You can also purchase insurance to inflate your the cost of somebody harming you. But anyway, because Maxwell actually killed this lady, caused a bit of harm, but then he created so much more profit from that, his fine was minuscule and he basically got away with it. Then you got Conroy Double Tap Body. So he's the leader of the Body Count conglomerate. So these are the Corp military, and they make a lot of their money these days from arm production and dealing with Legion contractors. You've got Blair Blair Trifuel, and she's from Cure. So you notice her surname, Trifuel, that represents what company actually funded her upbringing, because when a corp is, a lot of them, their children are funded by a company, and in exchange the company gets to rebrand their surname, and they get them as an indentured trainee from the age of 14 to 24. So anyway, so Blair's from Cure, big medical company, very bad company. They just happen to have the cure from a lot of viruses and diseases outbreaks. Very convenient. Then you got Edgar Dre, who's the Dre Mining Consortium. He's got a bit of a twisted history, a bit of a twisted fellow. So some really bad stuff happened to him and his family, but rather than becoming more empathetic, he pretty much became what was done to him, and does that to other people now. So lots of indentured servants. He does a lot of for-profit imprisonment and stuff like that. Then you've got Flesh Inc. So this is actually a Nephilim guy. So I'll zoom in just so I can read his name. Chris Kalor, we'll call that Chris. He's actually a Nephilim, and he's a Nephilim. He's on the board of management, and they provide all the flesh drones. So I'll deal with those guys a little bit later. Roland Bradford does a lot of stuff with tech and interspecies. He's also partnered up with a Palantir. Bronwyn Castiglione, so she's a banker, another old corporate. Does a lot to do with the RAISE policy, which is that thing about companies funding the upbringing of kids. So Bronwyn's responsible for that. Then you've got Darcy Octanto, so he is a fashionable person, does a lot of that. Then Jonas Soul, he's a bit more of an up-and-comer. So he was actually a warlord against Vix back on Varsphere. And he's had a lot of body work done to him to not only change his appearance, but also make him a lot younger from the Nephilim. And there's suspicion that he's actually a spy from the Devway Itch. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's the company is there. Just to give you a bit of a cross-section of the sort of stuff to get your imagination going. And then, yeah, we'll also cover some stims. I won't go into these in any depth. This is kind of an example of, the classic Draz, which is sort of a lot in first edition. But then you got some new ones here as well. Cool. Let's go into the other subspecies. So these are the socialites. So a small percentage of the corporation, but a lot of these people are like YouTubers in a way, or like bloggers and news reporters. So you might even get some that are like, you've got the lifestyle ones, which are all fashionable and trendy. But then you've also got one who might be like, record their escapades into exploring ancient ruins and fighting mechanids. So they're like the big social influencers within the Corp. Then after that, you've got the Neon Hunters. So the Neon Hunters are a very interesting group. So they make up a bit over 7% of the Corp. But they are kind of, how do you put this? They consider themselves capitalists, but they think that the primary corp culture is becoming a victim of their own success, in that they're falling prey to stagnation. Whereas these guys believe that risk and putting yourself out there and growth and change are requirements of part of the success of capitalist philosophy. So, yeah, these guys are, they're the risk takers, the entrepreneurs, the people who pick up a gun and grab a spaceship and fly out into the unknown to discover things. So yeah, they're pretty cool. They're interesting. They're showing the more edgy side of corporates. Next one is these are the flesh robots. So these are organic robots that are created by the Nephilim for the corporation, and this is the workforce. This is the bulk of the manual labor done by these guys. They're very tough and strong, and there's some There's some urban legends that some of them might be sentient. We'll let your GM determine whether that's the case or not. And also, as a player, there's an optional GM approved things there, so you can actually play as one of these if you want to. The final one here is the Vegatians. So these are the Vegati that were left behind on Varsphere. When the 10 warlords, they did their big exodus to Haven. So these are the guys who left behind. And they used to hate the term Vegati because that was the racial identity or the species identity that the Archons gave them. But they've changed it, and it's taken on a new meaning to represent sort of the strong and the tough people who live it out on the wastes of Varsphere still, either as miners or ranchers or scrap hunters or nomadic raiders and stuff like that. And you've got some example clans here. So these are some Vegatian clans. So these are the sort, if you want to play this species and group, but you want something that's much more post-apocalyptic sort of vibe or rougher, you know. Yeah. So I'm gonna see if I can find some artwork here. Give me 1 second that I'm working on for Varsphere. So still getting this done. Here we go. Okay. So it's super rough, and these cows will be changed, and this rancher, we'll put him on maybe a robot horse or a hover bike or something like this. It's just a draft sketch to sort of get a bit of a feel for it, and you very much got that sort of Wild West thing. Also, these cows, so they're actually going to be 3-legged mammals that are prone to exploding. So that's why they weren't taken off-world during the Exodus, because they're very hard to transport because of their proclivities to go boom. It's also their defense mechanism against predators. So, yeah. Cool. Okay, so anyway, that is the quick and the dirty of the corporation. In a future video, I'll do a much more deeper dive. I especially would love to do some deeper dive into some of the mega companies. And hopefully we'll get some more artwork, make them look good. And just for a quick reference, so this is the VAR system where they come from. So it's a twin-starred system, and you've got a Varsphere here is the only terraformed planet there, because it's not a very fancy system at all. And that's it. Just there. There's Haven. Cool. Okay. Take care, everyone.